Bruce Rauner got elected, his lieutenant governor, Judy Bartopinka for controller. It was not a great time to be on the ballot. But I won by 9,255 votes. Does anyone here know how many precincts there are in the state of Illinois?
Ooh, how many precincts? I know that we have 41 in Lee County. Precincts. Anybody want to guess? Jody, have any idea?
I'm wondering if it's 942 or something.
just over 10,000. What that
Okay.
means is I won my race by less than 1 vote per precinct. What that means is if every Democrat out there, well, a Democrat in every precinct went out and found one person who wasn't going to vote, or if a Republican precinct person found one person who wasn't going to vote and convinced them to come out and vote Republican, I would have lost. And vice versa. You can make a difference. That doesn't mean your vote will make a difference in every race. But everyone understands that our small actions all add up to something greater. And we can make a difference. And I know that. I'll go a little bit further back in my career. People who say to me, oh, let's write on rural areas. Rural areas are for Democrats. We don't need them. We're winning the suburbs now. We're winning the cities. That's all we need. First of all, if we want a working United States Senate, we can't write off rural America. Secondly, I know that things can change, but they don't have to be this way. I know this because, did I lose you all? What is going on?
No, you're here. We've got you.
I'm here. On the screen, something popped up in front of me. Give me just 1 second so I can still see you all.
Okay.
When I first started running for office, 20-some years.
Yeah, you're frozen now. You know, Mr. Frerichs, we might ask you to take your video off, to stop your video. I think we might be able to do we might be able to hear you better.
All right. How about this? Can you hear me fine now?
Yes.
Okay, you're not going to miss out on any theatrics. When I first started running, I was living in Collinsville, Illinois. Madison County was a Democratic stronghold. In 1998, St. Clair and Madison County ran up huge numbers for Democrats. But I lived in Champaign County. I grew up in Champaign County. When I went back home, I had friends in Madison County say, don't waste your time in Champaign County. It's a Republican county. You should get involved here in Metro East, and this is where we elect Democrats. 22 years later, Champaign County has elected all of its countywide elected officials, Democrats, has a solid majority on the county board. And unfortunately, Madison County has gone in the other direction. It has been quite sad to see. But that's why I tell you that nothing is certain here. Things can change. When I went home, I went up to my small town. I grew up in a town of about 800 people. My family were all farmers, and it was a fairly Republican area. And people said to me, why would you go there? There are no Democrats there. I told people, that's just not true. I'm going to try the video again. My hometown is full of Democrats. Majority of them are Democrats. Too many of them just don't know it yet. Too many of them have been fooled into thinking that they're Republicans. Too many people are voting against their interests because Republicans have divided us. They've created wedge issues. Now, that doesn't mean we should talk down to people, tell them you're wrong, you've been hooked. But we have.
Oops. We lost you again. It's good to know that all the
when I came back home,
yeah, there we go.
When I came back home to Champaign County in 1990, Champaign County Board had 7 members. Today they've cut it to 22, 27 members, there were 21 Republicans and 6 Democrats. It was a low water mark. And we also got together, worked together, and then in 2000, I ran for the county board. And I went to my fellow county board members and said, no, we must all stick together or we will hang separately. But what we need to do is have a united message, a unified message. And we all sat down and we talked about what people in Champaign County needed. We signed a pledge to the people, listing 10 things we would do. Republicans had run Champaign County forever. As long as there had been a Champaign County government, there had been a party, Republicans had run the county up until 2000. I ran in a Republican district. We ran a coordinated message. We pooled our money. We ran commercials talking about all of us, talking about what Democrats would we got elected. Talked about what Republicans had done to mess things up. We made it personal to people. I think in rural America, when we allow our national party to set the tone, too often it doesn't really resonate with our rural neighbors. But when we run a campaign and run local candidates and talk about local issues, we win. We talked about how Republicans had engaged in no-bid contracts, rewarding their crony buddies with tax. People saw how that affected them and their tax bill. We talked about services that weren't being provided that we would, like helping people with mental health and people with disabilities, because people in rural areas may not talk about it so much, but a lot of people in rural areas know people or have family suffering from disabilities. We found issues that resonate with them. We spoke with one voice and we won. We went from a low point in 1997, 21 Republicans, 6 Democrats, to just in 2000, 3 years later, 14 Democrats, 13 Republicans. We took control of that county board and we've not lost it since. Now, there have been some demographic changes that have been kind to us, but it doesn't happen by itself. It happens because a dedicated group of people got active and engaged and they made a difference. And that's my message to people in rural areas here tonight, is that things may look bad now, but I'm not giving up and I don't want anyone else to give up. We need to talk about issues that affect people in rural areas. And that means we need to have our own channels out there, our own social media, our own candidates talking about things. I'm a Democrat. I'm not ashamed of what the national party has done. But I just know that some of the things our national party talks about don't resonate with my neighbors in rural America. That doesn't mean we should give up. So those are some of my thoughts out there. I wrote today, because I believe fairly strongly in this, I wrote an op-ed that maybe you read, and maybe that's why you reached out to me.
Yes.
Calling the Democratic Party not to give up on rural America. It would be a mistake for a variety of reasons that I just ran through.
So
we need to.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm going to try one last time with video here because it shows I have a decent internet connection, probably on my end here. Okay. Jody, yeah, let's go into a discussion here, and I think I can probably read some of these.
Okay.
First, thanks for coming. I would like to know how the statewide Democrats are thinking about congressional races downstate, especially in Illinois 13. What a great question. Also, if you haven't addressed this, some thoughts on speaking to the rural downstate people about Democratic issues, what specific issues you think resonate best with state and rural people? Great question. So first off, we have currently 18 members of Congress. After this next redistrict, this next cycle, we'll only have 17. And so someone has to go. And I think that it's best if a Republican goes and not a Democrat. It looks like Democrats are going to draw districts. We don't know what the courts are going to say about them. We imagine Republicans will challenge Democratic maps. But my guess is what's going to happen is some of Rodney Davis's territory is going to be put in with Mike Bost. Some of it will be put in with Mary Miller. And some of it that tend to have a lot of Democrats will probably add some folks on this call in St. Clair County. If you look at where pockets of Democrats are in downstate Illinois, Sherry Bustos represents some Democrats in northwestern Illinois, but if you look in downstate Illinois, you've got a good number of them in Champaign-Urbana. You have growing numbers in Bloomington-Normal. You have some good pockets in Springfield. You had traditionally really good Democrats in St. Clair County, and still some parts of Madison County are pretty good. If you went from Metro East up to Springfield, Bloomington, Champaign, you could have a congressional district that could elect a Democrat. And Rodney Davis could choose to run in that district if it still had 13th. He could choose to run against Mary Miller. He could choose to run against Darren LaHood, or he could choose to run against Mike Bob. But it wouldn't be as easy as it's had in the past. So those are my thoughts there, but they're not consulting me, but from talks with people, I think you might see something like that. So issues that I think rural downstate people resonates with. And, I like to tell the story. One, we have a history to remind people of. And two, we have issues that are going to help them going forward. So when I came back home and ran for office, people said, why are you running as a Democrat? I said, well, because I am a Democrat. Well, your family are not Democrats. I said, oh, well, that's not true. Well, my mother's family, they're all Republicans. You were right there. But my father's family were Democrats. Now, he grew up on a farm. They all grew up on farms. And so people assume just you're a farmer, you're a Republican. But my grandfather lost his father when he was in 6th grade, had to drop out of school in 6th grade to work on the farm. It was a dairy farm. They milked cows, they tried to get milk to market. And in the 1920s, around Royal, Illinois, they didn't have electricity running to their house. So they couldn't refrigerate this milk. His life was hard. And it was FDR and Democrats who pushed for rural electrification that made the lives of Americans so much better. Now, rural America is electrified. So some of our neighbors may say, well, what do we care about something that happened 100 years ago? Well, you all know, and you're seeing some of this here today, access to broadband, access to reliable internet is still very much an issue in rural America. And I would ask, what have Republicans done to bring opportunities to rural America in terms of access to the internet? I can tell you it's J.B. Pritzker and Democrats that are spending money expanding broadband access to rural areas. And we shouldn't just do it and then feel good about ourselves if we did it. We need to remind people who did it. If people like these services, if they like being able to communicate with the world, if they like to be able to work from home, it's Democrats that are going to provide that opportunity. So we need to think in terms of things like that. My father grew up on a farm, but they didn't own enough farmland that he could take over the farm or could work with my grandfather. So he went to go work at a grain elevator. He ended up driving a truck for that elevator. He ended up joining the Teamsters and driving a semi hauling rock and asphalt. Now, I was not raised rich. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was a truck driver hauling rock and asphalt. But we had a decent middle-class living. We had some decent wages, enough money to put food on the table, not enough to do anything fancy. Big vacations weren't part of my upbringing. But my father also had things like his weekends off. If he got hurt, he had things like unemployment, workers' compensation or unemployment insurance. And I can tell you, it wasn't Republicans who fought for these things. It was Democrats who did it. And if any of your neighbors say, oh, well, we've already solved all those problems of child labor and a 40-hour work week, one thing, just look back at Bruce Rauner. When Republicans get in office, they try and repeal protections that Democrats fought for. They're trying to roll back protections for workers' compensation. They're trying to lower unemployment benefits. And go ahead and tell your friends and neighbors who have been affected by this pandemic and show them that it's Democrats who have fought to put that money in their pocket. It has been Republicans. Donald Trump can claim all he wants. He can put his name, could have put his name on all the mailings he wanted. It was Democrats who fought for things like that. And when we talk about issues that directly impact people in rural areas. Access to broadband, access to good paying jobs, to infrastructure. You know, Donald Trump became a joke. He talked about infrastructure week so much, and Joe Biden and Democrats are actually trying to make something happen to help with our roads, with our bridges, with our schools. And so I think when we talk about a lot of social issues, it's just to be more certain.
We lost you just as you got to social issues. So you had, when we talk about social issues, you froze at that point. Have we lost him?
Yeah, issues.
Okay, well,
Rural tend to be more conservative. Can you not hear me?
now we've got you back. We've got you back, but
Turn
I
on.
think when you have the video on, we lose you. Yeah.
Using too much. Okay. All right. Well, then you'll just get to hear my lovely voice. But yeah, talk about social. I think that's where we tend to lose in rural areas.
Right.
Now, that's not to say that we should change our stripes. I'm a Democrat. I am pro-choice. I'm not going to lie about that. But I think we need to be careful about what we talk about, what we highlight. And in rural areas, I think when we talk about the access to opportunities and how we're supporting families out there, you know, I know that there are a lot of families out there that, you know, are afraid of their kids not being able to get jobs in their small towns, that they're going to leave and they're never going to come back. But they're also worried that, are they going to be able to get an education? Can they afford that? And I tell you, that's another area we tell the opportunity for higher education, people opportunities. When I came into this office, I replaced a Republican treasurer. We were in charge of a college savings program, Bright Start and Bright Directions.
Yeah.
That program was poorly rated. It suffered from scandals. Poorly rated. It was a big problem for me to convince people to put their money into our program. But we came in, and I put out an RFP. I said, we're going to bid this out. I'm tired of Illinois families paying such high fees to Wall Street. And we want to change that. And we did change that. And we cut fees in half. That program now has some of the lowest fees in the country. And as a result, Morningstar Rating Agency gave Illinois Bright Start a gold rating, the highest rating they give out. We went from bronze to gold. We went from worst to first. And that didn't happen because a Republican was fighting to cut fees. No. They were more than happy to reward their Wall Street buddies with high fees. The Democrat made a difference. And we have good stories to tell of how we fight on behalf of people. I'll get a little more specific as the treasurer here. It's my office. But I came into office and I found there were life insurance companies that were selling life insurance policies to people, sitting down at the kitchen table in rural America and telling them, if anything happens to you, we'll be there for your loved ones. People signed on the line. And too often, what we found is when they passed away, no one was paid what was owed to them. Widows and orphans were left without money. Found lots of examples. We actually went and audited 22 life insurance companies and found over $500 million in unpaid life insurance benefits. $500 million just in Illinois, nationwide over $7 billion. You think Republicans who were pushing life insurance to pay out? Hell no, it was Democrats. I don't mind fighting with life insurance companies. Republicans cozy up next to them. And we explained to people that the Democrats are fighting to put money into your pocket, and it's Republicans who are fighting to keep more money in Wall Street bankers' pockets. When we talk about issues like that, I think that's where Democrats win.
Very specific things that you're doing. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Those are really good points.
I'm very specific things in my office, but there are other Democrats out there doing good things as well.
And we're seeing a lot of them.
That was a great question, Jody.
Can we go to Terry's question? She way back here somewhere, she said, What do we do with voters who say they agree with our issues, but they still can't bring themselves to pull that lever for a Democrat? We do hit that sometimes. What do you say to those folks, Mr. Frerichs?
Lack some sense into them. That's a joke. But here's what I think. We as Democrats sometimes, we know we are right. We know we have right on our side. And every now and then we find ourselves lecturing people. And sometimes we as Democrats are condescending. So just telling them they're wrong and silly doesn't persuade a lot of people. What I would say is when someone tells you around the issues, but they say, I just can't pull a lever for Democrat. Listen, use those ears. Ask them why. There's got to be some sort of reason. Admit that it's not on the issues. So what is it? Every person's got something different. I can't tell what the reason those people are. It could be they were raised Republican and they feel their parents might roll over in the grave if they voted for a Democrat. If that's the case, tell them like, your vote is private. Your parents have no idea how you voted. I've talked to people who, because they go to church, they think they can't be Democrats. They'll tell me they agree with them. I'll say things about Democrats, and they'll come up to me and they'll say things like, hey, I'm a Democrat too. Why are you whispering about it? I don't want my neighbors to know. It's like they feel ashamed. But we have right on our side. We have great stories. We shouldn't be scared to share them with people. When we whisper back to them, sending a message that we should be ashamed about this. We shouldn't speak up too loudly. Now, you don't want to stand on a street corner and scream at people and lecture and call them stupid, but we've got stories. We should share them with our neighbors. So I guess I would say if someone tells they just can't pull a lever for a Democrat, engage as a neighbor in a nice, kind way and say, you know, I think I'm running the issue. I don't know what is keeping you from doing it? And listen, and don't lecture. And they may talk themselves into doing it. They may tell you exactly what they need to hear to do the right thing and to vote for a Democrat. That's my best answer to that question.
Great. That was a wonderful answer. I think it gave us some actual things to just try when we hit that. I see another question here from Joel in Southern Illinois. He says that, what is the state party doing to recruit and support talent in rural Illinois? This is something that we've struggled with.
Yeah. So I'll say two things. The state party, I've spoken with Robin Kelly, is interested in competing all over the state. Doesn't mean we'll win everywhere in the state. What we need to do is sort of stem the bleeding, stop the bleeding in the worst parts of the state. And there we can. There's lots of room for improvement there in certain parts of our state. But in terms of recruiting talent, we really need to build a. That's part of what we did in Champaign County. I came back of the 7 countywide elected offices when I came back. We didn't have the county executive then. Republicans had 6 of them. Democrats had 1. Now you can go and recruit a good candidate for state's attorney or for county clerk. You can find someone who's been involved in politics before, but in a county with 200,000 people, it's a big first step. Congress can be a big first step if you don't have experience, if you don't have personal wealth. State rep or state senate can be. Almost everyone can run for county board, can run for a township office without raising that much money. There aren't that many voters out there. You can go out and knock doors, introduce yourself to enough people that you can win without an awful lot of state support. And so I would say that 1, the state party needs to do a better job of supporting candidates around the state, but we also shouldn't look to the state party as salvation. We should look to recruit candidates for local offices. I think we as Democrats, a lot of people in this call probably got involved because they saw what happened at the federal level. Donald Trump got elected, Republicans were elected, and we knew that there would be big consequences for our nation and for the world. I can tell you one place Republicans have been really good at is building their farm system. They realize that they know when someone gets a little experience in office, experience running for office as a township supervisor, a township trustee, or a county board member, they then in turn become a better candidate for state representative. And when they get someone elected state representative, they're a better candidate usually for Congress because of that experience. And so my advice is we need to make sure the state party doesn't forget us, make sure the state party does devote some resources, but we can't wait for the state party. And we need to focus, I think, locally. And the great thing about a local race, we may not be voting on national issues, it may not be as exciting, but they make a real difference in people's lives. And there doesn't seem to be that big of a social issue difference in a township supervisor's race or for a county board race. We can focus on issues like local roads and local schools and wise use of tax dollars, where we as Democrats can win. And then we've got talking points to go against the Republicans. We can play on our own game, which is economic success and opportunity for all people. When we talk about things that way, I just think we win. And so I think that's, it's not always sexy, but I'm a statewide office holder whose first office was county board. And
we've taken note of, excuse me, Mr. Frerichs. We've taken note of the fact that every single county board is going to be open in 2022. And so we've issued a challenge in this group for every member of this group to find one person at least to run for a county board office, for county board in their area. We did have at least 2 people run for township office in 2021. One was successful, one was not from this group. And we've had some people run for community college.
That's a great place.
Yeah. So yeah, we're starting there. Let's see.
Now, let me say one other story, and then we'll get to the next question. Because at the beginning, you talked about how hard you worked and how you weren't successful in all the races that you wanted to be. The very first time I ran for office, I ran for state representative. I was green, I didn't have a lot of experience. We ran a good campaign, worked really hard, and gave the 22-year incumbent the closest race of his life. Now, part of the reason I ran against him is I came back home to my small town, and I just asked people, what would you think if I ran for state representative against Tim Johnson? And what I heard from everyone I asked was, oh, you'd be so much better than that guy, but don't waste your time. Oh, I'd love to vote for you, but you can't beat him. Well, I think you'd be great, but he's the incumbent's invincible. And I heard that from enough people that I realized there's an opportunity here. And so I ran and I asked people, why do you think he's doing so bad? He doesn't respond to our calls. He doesn't respond to our issues. In my hometown, it's a small community. There's a state route that runs just to the north of it. And it's dangerous to pull out onto that road. People in town asked for just a blinking light. You don't need a stop sign, just a blinking light, slow people down and know there's this small town here that they can't be driving by at 80 miles an hour. He never responded. I ran against him. I beat him 75-25 in that small town. And within 2 months of that election, there was a blinking light put up on that state route outside of that town. People came to me and said, I'm furious. I said, what are you mad about? That light went up right after the election. And I said, why are you mad? The only reason he put that light up is because you ran. I said, exactly. I ran to make a difference. I ran because he was not responsive. I ran because he wasn't listening to you. And you know what? I ran and he became responsive and listened to you. You have to find the victories where they are. By raising issues out there. We don't always win, but we push our issues forward. And for those people who can't see themselves supporting a Democrat, maybe it's because they see all of their neighbors support Republicans. But let me tell you, when someone runs for township supervisor and loses 55-45, it sends a message to other people out there, I'm not alone. I'm not the only Democrat out there. And that next election down the road, they might feel more comfortable pulling a Democratic ballot. It's a process. It is long term, but as Martin Luther King Jr. said, the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. It doesn't bend on its own. It bends when we get involved.
Oh, it's so wonderful, so inspirational. Do you have time for one more question?
Yes.
We've taken way more time than I had promised we would take of yours, but do you have time for one?
I appreciate you guys put into helping elect good people, so
Okay.
happy to help out.
All right. Well, this is from Kathy Heitzler. And she's in. We're a group in Dixon, Illinois called Action for a Better Tomorrow, Sauk Valley, and we have really struggled, and I don't think we're unique in trying to get younger people involved in our organization. We've tried to be very creative. Do you have any suggestions for how to get more young people involved?
That is a tough one. It is a difficult one, and I'll say because I see a lot of young people who live in rural areas have been sort of indoctrinated. I've had it tough to find a lot of young Democrats in rural areas. I found that ones that have Democratic leanings frequently look to move to cities or go away to college. Mm-hmm. I find that when older people try to entice younger people into the Democratic Party, I definitely found success. I think that young people like to hang out with other young people. And, years ago, we had a group called Young Democrats of America, and there'd be chapters all over the country. And so, quite frankly, I think here's what I think. This is my guess. I've not been overly successful with it. Is find one or two young people, and then help them to start their own organization. They can call it Young Democrats. They can call it Young Indivisible. They can call it whatever they want, and work with them sort of as mentors, and find ways that your groups can work together, but let them have their own space. I think it's an issue of like raising teenagers. If you try to tell teenagers what to do and you try and help them be cool, they will just rebel against you. Now, not saying that people in their 20s or 30s are like teenagers, but I think it's so similar. Teenagers want to feel that they have some control over their lives. At the same time, they do need some guidance. They do like occasionally spending time with their parents, but they also want to go out there now and then. And, if you can find one or two people who really believe in this, what I found in Champaign County, the Young Democrats there really needs to be a pretty social component to it. If you can find someone, think of this as sort of like missionary work. I know some family members who are missionaries. And if you go into a foreign country and tell people, you must believe my way or you're damned to hell. Not very welcome. Like you go as a missionary and say, hey, I'm offering free education, free language lessons. I'm offering free healthcare. People will come for that. And then when they feel like you really care about them and they get to know you, then they will listen to you about why you do this stuff. But you can't start with just lecturing people. You got to find opportunities for them to come get to know you first. And what I found as a young people, you can have an apple picking event or something, but if they don't like to pick apples, they're not going to show up. You got to find something to get them in the door, and really there's got to be some faces that look like them. Now, once they come in, they get to know a group, and then it'd be easy to come around and do things together. But I really I like the old model of the Democratic Party and the Young Democrats. They've got their own space where they can talk, their own space where they can socialize and feel comfortable. And this is also a long, long process, but that's my best guess, my best estimate.
Well, thank you very much for that. And we want to thank you once again for being here with us tonight. I know that we've learned a lot from you. I've been busily writing notes and getting these ideas down, and you've given us a lot of inspiration and a lot of hope. And we'll see what happens in 2022. We're very anxious to have a better outcome than we did in 2020. So
let's just say Anthony said something. He sees it differently here. I know he's in another state here, and they're somewhat different. But he says our party hasn't been particularly good over the last 40 years. They don't believe it. Here's my point then. And throw it back to them and say, if things aren't good for you in rural America, what have Republicans done for you? At least Democrats have ideas. Democrats have a track record of history, and it may be more than 40 years ago in those cases. But I'm not going to concede that, because I think Democrats have done things for rural areas. But make them say, well, what have Republicans done for you? I can tell you what they've done. They have stood by big business as they've allowed box stores to come in and push mom and pop stores out of rural areas. That's who they get their funding from. That's who they support. The legislation they support is helping corporate America. It's not helping Main Street. It's just not. And maybe we as Democrats need to have some better examples. But you can't just say 80 years ago, Democrats helped rural America. That's not enough. But you should also be proud of our history and say we did it in the past. We have ideas for it today as well. And make sure you have some actual ideas to point out to people. So, there needs to be a little give and take. He says they already believe the Democrats haven't. But what have Republicans done? I can't think of anything for rural America. Now,
Yeah.
If you want to talk on social issues and we want to concede that all rural people are very conservative socially, well then maybe. But on economic issues that improve their lives, let me tell you, these rural areas that have seen decline, they've done it with Republican members of Congress, with Republican state representatives. It's not Republicans that have done it. So I would throw it back in their face, say, you think we've had decline for 40 years? Well, who's been in charge in these rural areas? Republicans. How about it's time for a change? How do we go back to the party that once helped rural America and has plans to do it again? I won't concede anything to Republicans. Okay. Anyway, yes, I should be getting to dinner here. But thank you all very much. Thanks for inviting me.
We thank you so much for being here with us. You're so inspirational. You're so wonderful. We knew you would be, because we've all, I think, heard you across the state before, and we just needed to hear your advice on this particular topic. And we thank you for all those good words, and we so appreciate your time.
I don't know if I'll freeze, but if I freeze, you'll at least freeze seeing me. Thank you guys for your time. We can make a difference. We can make changes, but it only happens when we work together.
All right. Thank you so much. We do appreciate you being with us. Take good care.
Take care.
All right. Wonderful. I'm sorry that we didn't have better connection. He's in Chicago today, so that's we can't blame it on rural broadband, can we? So that was wonderful. I've been furiously taking notes. I think that we probably all have been, and many good ideas from our wonderful Illinois treasurer, Michael Frerichs. He really is always inspirational. And of course, he's from Champaign, so there's a little pride there also. And he's been successful. I mean, he's done some really wonderful things for our state. Okay, so let's, at this point, let me turn it over. We just have about 10 minutes. And I know Marcy wants to do a plug for the ongoing phone bank. So do you want to do one more plug for that? And then we'll come back to our next agenda item.
Yeah, well, actually, can I do a plug for two things? Would that be
Absolutely.
okay? Okay. I first will plug the phone bank. This weekend, as you guys know, every weekend except for May 8th, we're going to be off on May 8th, and you can figure out why. And I will put a plug in for something then too. But this Saturday, as most Saturdays, we are going to have our rural phone bank from 4 to 5:30. We have really struggled getting volunteers to come, but those of us who are there and end up getting a whole lot of people who do want to call Rodney Davis to tell him to vote for HR 603, the Raise the Wage Act of 2021, or better known as the Fight for $15 an hour. We've had a lot of good luck with that. We just haven't had a lot of volunteers. I am now putting a link in the chat to the phone bank, to the Zoom meeting for the phone bank. So Saturday from 4 to 5:30, and that will be this weekend, but next weekend, May 8th, we'll be taking a hiatus, and that's what I'm going to do a plug for right now. I noticed on the Mobilize map for the May 8th HR 4 John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act Day of Action votercades, that there are only two groups in downstate of the south suburbs that are doing May 8th things. And one happens to be in Champaign-Urbana, and Terry and I are helping organize that one. So there's one in Champaign-Urbana and there's one in Metro East. So for example, Jody, you live in Bloomington, that's not too far. People, I know there are people who live in Mattoon. If you want to come, I will put a link in the chat to the Mobilize event you can sign up for. It will start at 1 o'clock. It is going to be COVID safe. It's going to start at 1 o'clock on Saturday, May 8th. We are going to meet in Champaign. Okay. Dang it, that's not that. Let me get a different link than that. Anyway, we're gonna meet in Champaign at the Country Fair Shopping Center parking lot. We're going to decorate our cars and wait and listen and watch the Facebook Live broadcast. And then when the first group in Georgia crosses the Edmund Pettus Bridge, we will all drive our cars slowly from Champaign to Urbana, which is not very far. And we will end up in Lincoln Square, where we will have a COVID safe outside celebration. Anyone who is interested in just staying in your cars, you can do that. Or if you want to get out, we will have speakers, we will have food, we will have a voter registration table. We're going to have music. So please join us. So, thank you, Terry. So yes, I got a smaller version, but Terry got the bit.ly version for the sign up. So anybody who is downstate of the south suburbs, we may be your if you want to come, we may be your closest bet, unless you live way far south, and then probably Metro East will be your closest bet. So if anyone has questions on that, or anyone has questions on the phone bank, we really could use volunteers on the phone bank. And like I said, the voters that we call are very sympathetic, or at least they seem to be. They all want to take Rodney Davis's phone number and call him to tell him to fight for $15 an hour, so his father and his brother don't make a whole lot of money off of these poor workers that work at McDonald's for them and make money hand over fist, and they're going home and living on Medicaid.
Great. Thank you, Marcy. Really appreciate it. And I will put in one more pitch for that phone bank. So 4 o'clock on Saturday, because it really is one of the easiest calls to make. People really are quite supportive. Okay, so we are down to about 5 minutes, and what I had hoped that we would do with the rest of our time today, but we're going to be a little short on time. I wanted to have us spend a little bit of time. One of our goals is to amplify the good things that are happening. And last night we had a pretty inspirational speech from our president, and he brought up a lot of things that I think can be amplified in rural Illinois. So he touched on many things that will have a direct impact on our rural population in Illinois. And so I thought we might just take a few minutes and people can chime in and share what they think should be amplified from that speech last night by letters to the editor, in social media, in op-ed pieces. I mean, the reason that we knew that Michael Frerichs should come on this call was because of an op-ed that he wrote. Any way that you have to get the word out on rural radio. So take yourself off mute, and what was an issue that was brought up last night that needs to be amplified in rural Illinois? Who wants to begin? Then
I
okay.
will, Sarah.
Okay,
I
Carrie.
amplified this already today. I put a post up on Facebook with a great photo of Biden. And he had that phrase, which he kind of quipped off of Trump when he said, I don't see why we can't make wind turbines in Pittsburgh instead of Beijing. And, I put that up on my Facebook page, and then on my Twitter account, I put that up, but then I had underneath, and I don't see why we can't build them in Southern Illinois.
So you made it local. Good for you, Carrie. Very
Yeah.
nice, very effective. Thank you. Yes, I thought that Buy America portion of the speech was pretty effective. Anything else?
I think that we should emphasize getting prescription drugs cheaper, because a lot of older people in rural Illinois could really use that.
Yep. So there you go, Kathy. Letter to the editor or a social media blitz to get that word out. Anyone else? Something from the speech last night that you think we need to amplify?
You hear me?
Yes.
Jobs, infrastructure, roads,
Yes.
you name it. I mean, Trump talked about infrastructure for 5 minutes and did nothing.
Yes.
But every other word was jobs this and jobs that, and he's right. So
Yes. Jobs and infrastructure. There you go.
And I have one other thing. How do you folks deal with the conservatives in your areas, in the rural areas, saying that the Democrats are all about socialism, and all these programs are leaning towards, the Republicans keep throwing that out there as their buzzword. We're socialists. It's not true. And I don't see anybody refuting that. So I just wanted to put that out there. I don't know, maybe you have some answers.
Early in this group, we decided to call ourselves Main Street Americans. So that's when somebody says, "Oh, you're a socialist," we say, "No, we're just a Main Street American. Look, I'm on this board, I'm on that board, I work for the art gallery, I run the community garden, I'm an elder at First Presbyterian Church," and that's not very socialist, is it? I'm a Main Street American.
Yeah, but when I talk to my mom about that, I always say, you like your Social Security, right?
Yeah.
You like there's a lot of things that we already pretty much like as socialism in a way, and particularly Social Security, since it already has that in there. You just say, good, if you don't like socialism, then I'll take your Social Security away today, and you don't need it, because go away.
Even taking care of roads, our plumbing, our water getting delivered to our houses. These are things that serve the social great. So, I don't get it, but all right.
Yeah, but that's what Fox News is using is a bad thing.
We've got one more minute, one more thing from last night's speech that you think we need to amplify. What about those shots in the arm? I loved his statement that 90% of Americans can get their vaccine within five miles. I wrote it down. Within I think it was within 5 miles of their home. That really strikes in rural America, because so many people will, and I know here it's very true. There was a vaccine drive at the college, which is a mile away. Walgreens is what, 4 miles away. So I could go to any number of places and get a vaccine within 5 miles of my house. One more thing that he said last night that we want to amplify.
There was
Anybody?
something funny. I'll tell you something funny I thought was hysterical. When he looked at the Republicans and he was talking about gun control and, you know, he said the war weapons, the AK weapons. And he said, what? You think deer wear flak jackets? I thought that was great.
He really went off his script surprisingly well. I mean, it was really interesting. All right, so we're here at 8:30. We thank you so much. I thank you all so much for being with us tonight. I hope that you enjoyed Mr. Frerichs. I certainly did. I think he's a real treat, and I have 3 Bright Start accounts. So I'm really glad to know that he's in charge of that and investing it well. So yeah. So thank you all. And don't forget to help Marcy on Saturday with the phone bank. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Take good care. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Sarah. You rock.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.